Let's talk about some of the highlights in Israel that are very noteworthy. We could probably spend a very long time because there's so many.
Right.
But let's start up north with the Galilee. So first you have the Sea of Galilee. What can you tell us about that?
Oh, the Sea of Galilee is an amazing place. First of all, it's the second lowest point in the earth and part of the Syrian-African rift. Beautiful, beautiful place. But the Sea of Galilee is special because it saw most of the miracles of Jesus. In fact, the northern shores of the Sea of Galilee saw 3/4 of the gospel. And small towns like Capernaum and Bethsaida and Chorazim, those three villages saw most of the miracles of Jesus. So very, very special. It's where he walked on the water. It's where he spent most of his ministry.
Wow. So let's talk about Capernaum. So what can you tell us about Capernaum?
Capernaum is his own hometown. Scripture says that he was from Nazareth. And remember, he grew up in Nazareth, and a prophet wasn't accepted in his own hometown. And so the next thing we know, the infuriated people of Nazareth were ready to throw him off the brow of a hill.
Yeah.
And the next thing we know, he reappears in Capernaum, which he calls his own hometown. Peter lived in Capernaum, and that became literally the center of his ministry. And so many things we can't even imagine happened in Capernaum. John 21 says that there's not enough books in the world to contain the miracles that took place in those 3 short years of his life. And most of those miracles, many of them, happened at Capernaum.
What are some of the places that are visited there? Is Peter's house, I believe, is there?
Right. When you're visiting and touring through Capernaum, one of the highlights, obviously, is the house of Peter. And so if you really think about it, that could have been, first of all, we know that Peter was from Bethsaida.
Right.
He was not from Capernaum, but his wife was from Capernaum, and so that became his own city too. And so if you think about the house of Peter, that could have been where the paralytic was lowered through the roof.
Right.
It could have been where Jesus stayed. It could have been where Peter's mother-in-law was healed from fever, and it could have been the first church. So what an amazing find.
Yeah. Bethsaida. So the location of Bethsaida is somewhat controversial, but there's a new archaeological dig, isn't there?
Well, it was very exciting to be able to sit down with Professor Aviam and learn more about the new possible location of Bethsaida in El Araj. And up until then, Etel was the calculated location of Bethsaida. It was Edward Robinson in 1838 that believed that was the biblical Bethsaida, also known as Julius. But things are changing, and so we're excited to find out more and more. But we've even found Roman ruins there and possibly a Byzantine church. So we might have just found the new or the real accurate Bethsaida, which makes more sense because it's much closer to the Sea of Galilee. And we know that that was a fisherman's town. In fact, Bethsaida means house of the fishermen.
Right.
And so we know it had to be near the Sea of Galilee. And also home to several of the disciples, and where Jesus healed that blind man.
Yeah, so the significance of Bethsaida is the fact that it was home to several disciples, and there was a miracle performed there, that blind man healed there. So that's very exciting. And in that same area, actually all these things are in pretty close proximity, as you cited. We also have a find of a synagogue that existed in the time of Jesus. What is that?
Right. Well, these are brand new excavations, and so just over the past couple of years, we've started to excavate the city of Magdala, which is the traditional birthplace of Mary of Magdalene. So in Magdala, we actually found a synagogue from the time of Jesus, from the Second Temple period.
Wow.
Now you see, in Capernaum, we have a synagogue, but the base was from the time of Jesus. The actual synagogue you're looking at is 3rd or 4th century synagogue.
Right.
But in Magdala, we found a synagogue from the time of Jesus, and we believe he was there. And it's just amazing, all of the things that they're finding, but a very, very significant site.
Now, where that's located on the Sea of Galilee, there's many references to crossing over, and that's where some boats and fishermen would be in Magdala, right? So is it supposed that he would stop at that synagogue and then catch a ride across the water to his hometown, or what is speculated about that?
Sure, yeah, I'm sure that he took one of the boats many, many, many times to Capernaum, and what Scripture says, to the other side,
Right.
which is the Decapolis. And so the southern Golan Heights on the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee is the Decapolis. There were 10 pagan Hellenistic cities all on the other side of the sea. And that's why if they were pagan and Hellenistic, that's the only reason there would be swine there.
Right.
And that's where the miracle of the swine took place.
Right, and you can actually see those areas right from Capernaum and Magdala and these other places.
Right, right.
So also in that same general vicinity is the Mount of Beatitudes. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that's actually where Jesus gave the Sermon on the Mount, which is the longest sermon in the Gospels and probably the most known sermon of Jesus. But what are Beatitudes? They're attitudes for kingdom people to be in. So it's a very, very important location. I think in understanding Jesus, you have to go back to the Jewish roots of Jesus and who he was and what he was trying to teach. See, Jesus was a kingdom person. And he was continually a kingdom person. He was continually in kingdom attitude.
Yeah, and the Sermon on the Mount, of course, very famous, and it would make sense, I guess, from a proximity standpoint, that he would have that sermon there. It's still in that same general vicinity where it seemed his ministry was, and it's very exciting to be able to hit all these spots and experience them, without having to drive days in between.
I think that's the thing that shocks people is that Israel's really a small country. I mean, about 95% of the Bible took place in an area of 150 by 50 miles.
Wow.
And 3/4 of the gospel took place in a tiny little triangle that's just several miles big, and that saw most of the miracles and most of the gospel.
And another thing is in this small country, the size, I think, landmass-wise, I think you said the size of New Jersey,
That's right.
Where I'm from.
Right.
And but there's 5 different climates?
Yes, 5 different climate zones. And so I always say God gave us a little bit of everything. So, and one day you can be in the snow, and in the desert, you can be by the beautiful Mediterranean Sea, you can be in the forest, and everything else, everything in between.
That's it for this particular interview. Thanks for joining me. Really excited to take this ongoing journey with you as we keep bringing more content. If you haven't already, you really should subscribe to this channel. There's a lot of phenomenal content coming down the road into the future that you'll want to know about. Leave a comment down here. I think people would love to hear from you, and then you can hear from them too. If you liked it, go ahead and give a like. It only takes half a second, and share this with people that you care about. The world needs more light in it right now. So thanks for being with me. Hope to connect with you again soon.